Welcome to the Author Your Life podcast, where you can write a new script for your life and become the hero of your story. I'm your host, David McRae. You are the author of your life. Let's get started.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Before we launch into the podcast, I'd like to tell you about my book, Author Your Life, Become the Hero of Your Story. This is a book for people who are at a crossroads in life and want to make a fresh start. Judging by the fact that you're listening to this podcast, I suspect that you may well be one of those people. This book is going to help you to change your narrative and rewrite the scripts in life that are holding you back. This book covers the latest science and research showing you how to become the person you want to be and live the life that you want to live. I'd like to invite you to get this book not only because I feel it's a great book that's going to help you, but also it's going to support the podcast as well. I love podcasts, but sometimes all of those ads that you get can be really irrelevant and annoying when you just want to listen to a good piece of training or a good interview. So I therefore made the decision with my podcasts that number one, I wanted my podcast to be free so that everyone could listen to it. And number two, that I wasn't going to fund it through all these annoying and irrelevant adverts and commercials. Therefore, if you want to support the podcast and support all the things that I put out there for free, whether it be here on the podcast, my YouTube channel, other areas on social media, then buying a book is going to enable and help that process. So this is what we call a win-win scenario. By buying the book, you help to support my work and all the free stuff that I put out there, and you also get a really transformational book that's going to help you make those changes that you really want in your life. So if you feel you're someone who's at that crossroads in life, you're looking for a new direction, you're looking for a fresh start, then make sure you get this book. Author Your Life, Become the Hero of Your Story is available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Whatever your preferred medium, it's there for you to go get right now. Hello, Story Changers, and welcome back to another episode of the Author Your Life podcast. In today's episode, we have a super powerful and inspiring interview with Madeline Black. And this is the first interview on the Author Your Life podcast that I'm going to have to issue a warning with. And the warning is that a lot of the subject material in this interview is talking about rape and sexual violence. So just to make you aware, if you feel that this will be upsetting or triggering for you, I just want to give you a heads up before we go in. But I hope for anyone, regardless of whether you've been a victim of these types of crimes or not, you're going to find this a really impactful, useful, and even healing interview with Madeline. So who is Madeline? Madeline Black chose to forgive the two men who gang raped her at 13 years old, and she shares her story for many reasons. She wants to end the shame, stigma, and silence surrounding sexual violence, enabling others to find their voice, whatever their story is. She wants people to know that it's not what happens to us that is important, but what we do with it. She wants to encourage others to live their life courageously too, and ultimately she hopes to inspire hope and show people that we are all much stronger than we think we are. The sharing of her story publicly on the Forgiveness Project website in September 2014 opened many doors for Madeline in ways she never imagined, and the invitations started to pour in. Many women and men got in contact and explained how reading her story gave them strength, hope, and a different perspective on what's possible in their lives. She's been invited to share her story of being gang raped as a teenager at conferences, book events, schools, and on radio and television interviews. She's been on the Jeremy Vine show on BBC Two, and she's been interviewed by Sir Trevor McDonald. She recognises that she was a victim of a crime that left her silent for many years, but has now found her voice and intends to use it. Not just for her, but for so many who can't find theirs yet. In March 2018, she won the Amazing Strength Award at the #1 magazine Amazing Woman Awards, and in October of the same year was asked to be the patron for Say Women, a Scottish organisation which offers safe accommodation and support to young women who are survivors of sexual abuse and rape and who are homeless. She is one of 50 thrivers taking part in research by the Global Resilience Project to develop a resilience blueprint for others. She is a TEDx speaker, a storyteller for the Forgiveness Project, and has recently become involved with their program Restore, sharing her story in prisons. Her memoir, Unbroken, was published on April 4th, 2017, and she continues to work as a psychotherapist. In our interview today, you will learn forgiveness is not for other people, it's for you. To see the events of your past as pictures. Speaking out is the job of all of us, not just some of us. And the power of sharing your story. You're going to learn this and so much more in this powerful and very moving interview with Madeline Black. Madeline, welcome to the Author Your Life podcast.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
I think this is going to be a very powerful and insightful conversation today. And I'd like to just start getting into who you are and the work that you do on Author Your Life. I love the power of stories, and I always encourage people to begin with their story of who they are and how they've got here today. So, Madeline, would you like to share a little bit of your story with us today?
Sure. I totally also believe in the power of sharing our stories, that if a person hears a story at the right time in their life, it can be so healing for them. So my story really starts when I was 13 and I was gang raped by two men. And I was quiet for many, many years. But about 5 years ago, I shared my story publicly, and it just opened so many doors, so much so that I've stopped now working as a psychotherapist, and I just focus on speaking out. I've become an activist, an author, a speaker, a storyteller, a story healer, whatever you want to call it. So I feel like this is my path now, and this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Mm-hmm. So that was a very accelerated look at things, and I'm sure this was not an accelerated journey for you. This was a lot of challenge and struggle. Would you like to share with us some of this process of how you went through such a horrendous experience, and ultimately you've come out this side being such a champion for speaking out about these types of issues?
Absolutely. I didn't get to this place overnight. It's been a huge process, and it's been a culmination of many different types of therapies, a lot of speaking therapy, a lot of kind of body therapies as well, but also my attitude over the years. For example, I decided when I met my partner when I was 17, very young, a long time ago. And when we decided to get married, I told Stephen I would never become a mum, because I thought giving birth was going to be like being raped again. And I thought I couldn't do that. But something came in one day when we were away, when he asked me the question again about starting a family. And I just thought, if I never become a mum, then they've won. And I'm handing them all my power and control. So I came up with my plan that I just call my best revenge, that I was determined to live my life as well as I possibly could, refusing to be identified and obviously become a mother. And I had 3 gorgeous girls, and I really thought, that was it, that motherhood had healed me. But looking back, I see how we can convince ourselves of anything, that I really wasn't coming from a very healed place a lot of the time. And yeah, I've had to work it in layers, I guess, is the best way. I worked a little bit for a little while, and then I was okay, then a little bit for another while. But clearly it affected my mental health for many years. I had many phobias, fears, anxieties, eating disorders. I used drugs and alcohol to numb out. Suicide attempts. I was in a psychiatric ward for about 3-4 months when I was a young teenager. But slowly over time, it has got easier. And I did something which took me by surprise as well. When my eldest daughter Anna turned 13, all my memories came back. And I really thought I was going mad. I thought if it was so bad, I would remember it. Now, as a psychotherapist, I understand the mind shuts things down to protect us. And when we are ready, whether we agree or not, things come back. And then really it's your cue. This is time to work it now. But near to the end of those sessions, my therapist planted a seed in my head when he said to me, maybe they weren't born rapists, these 2 young men. And it just set me on this journey of wondering and questioning and an inquiry of how could these 2 young men, not much older than me, know to be so violent towards another human being. And it surprised me, but I started to feel compassion towards them, because I thought, I've done a great job at living my life as best as I can, but they have to live with what they've done to another human being. And somehow the word forgiveness came in, which was like, I never wanted to forgive them. I had acts of revenge planned in my head. I wanted them to know exactly what it felt like. But, if I held on to all the anger and the hurt, they'd have no idea. It was only going to harm me and my husband and my kids that I struggled to have for years. So forgiveness for me is about understanding, but it also, it took me to a place where I had to stop denying what had happened, because the denying was causing me more damage than the pictures themselves that were coming back. I didn't want to believe this had happened to me, but I see that was my shame. I was ashamed that if people knew, they would look at me differently, that they wouldn't want to know me, they would somehow think this is a reflection of me. But now I know it was a crime committed against my body. I'm not the things that were done to me, and 100% of all rapes are caused by rapists. Nothing else. There's never a reflection of the survivor or the victim. But we live in a rape-blaming culture. Sadly, it's very prevalent even today. I've just been involved in a Twitter argument with somebody about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, God, not one of those.
Yeah, one of those. But it's good. I have an amazing army of supporters that just jump in and do my supporting for me. Yeah, forgiveness was my way of letting everything go, understanding, and it really did bring me to a place of peace. Mm-hmm. So that's been about a 35-year journey summed up in about 5 minutes.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that I'd really like to pick out and talk about a little bit more. The first, I just love this idea of best revenge, by the way. I really liked that idea of, it's a very powerful, empowering way to look at things, taking your best revenge. So I liked the way that you framed that. You were talking about how a lot of this had been suppressed, and when your daughter turned 13, hit that same age, everything kind of came to the fore again. And I think a lot of people in life are suppressing, perhaps not traumas quite as severe as yours. I think we are all bottling up stuff. We've all got stuff going on, right? What do you think is the process, or what has been helpful for you in terms of how do you stop suppressing stuff and ultimately be able to process it and release it?
Yeah, it's easy on this side now, but when I was caught in it, you're not aware that you're doing that. You convince yourself that I'm really okay, but we all wear a mask, we all say that we're fine and we're not really. But I had been going to see a teacher for many, many years. I guess you would call him a shaman. He's a teacher of life, a man named Imaho. And in about 2010, he said to me, "Really, be really good if you wrote your story down." And I said, there's no way I'm letting you read it or anyone else read it. But I would stop and start this process, and it took me about 4 years and about 12 pages spilled out. And he said, use everything that happened, put all the names, all the places, all the details. And I gave it to him, and then he asked permission if he could use it in one of his teachings. And I just thought, okay, I trust this man, so I have to let him. I don't have to, I choose to let him do this. And whilst he was doing this teaching, it was in Switzerland, I was back home in Glasgow, I could just feel all these words flying around in my head. And I thought, he's let them read what I had written. And I asked him, and he confirmed that everybody had read these few pages, 12 pages. And I just thought I could never go back. That's it. I was so mortified. But again, I could see that was my shame. And I went back to another workshop, which was then in Ireland, the next one for me. And walking in, I just felt so exposed and so vulnerable. And all these people knew the worst, my worst intimate details about me. But actually, I thought, I've got nothing to hide anymore. I walked in and it just like all the shame shattered. What I didn't know, I knew afterwards, he told them to leave me alone, to give me some peace. So when I walked in, they all looked down at their feet. So nobody said a word to me, which was even more awkward. But slowly, it's a workshop for 4 days. And near to the end, people started to tell me their story, or they'd had a similar situation, or they were involved in a business deal and somebody scammed them and they could never forgive them, and they held on to all the anger. But they said, if I could forgive these two men, then they could let that go. And yes, so writing down my story, Imaho said my story would be useful to other people, and I didn't get it then. But when I shared it with the Forgiveness Project in 2014, Marina calls us story healers. She's the founder of the organization. And I have felt the healing powers that come so many times. And then I wrote my book. And it was interesting because my friend Joe, who was my editor, also goes to the workshops, and he said, you need to put the details down that you wrote for Imaho. And I said, no way, I'm not putting that in the book. It's one thing in a workshop, another thing, letting it go out there into the world. And he said, no, as a man, it really helped him to see what can take place. And so it made me think, and I saw it's still my shame, really. It's still my concern and what other people will think about me. And so I decided in the end that, I would put all the details in. And then I had a twist with my publishers. They said, we don't think you should put the details in. He hadn't read anything like that, and he thought it was too much. And I thought, I'm not going to sanitize it now. I'm not going to make it easier for people to die just because they feel uncomfortable. This is my truth, and this is what happened. So I think for me, finding my voice has been the biggest thing that I've ever done. That's really helped me, because I don't care who knows now. I really don't. And I think if we don't speak about anything, not necessarily rape or sexual abuse, we hold ourselves back in some way. And if we can find our voice and speak our truth, then we stand in our power.
Yeah. This idea of uncomfortable truths, we come across this a lot in our lives, in our everyday relationships. We have uncomfortable truths to share, and obviously you've had a very uncomfortable truth to share. What would be your advice for how we can share our everyday uncomfortable truths with each other, to take some of that courage that you're able to show and bring that into our everyday lives?
Yeah, I would really tell people, if they're going to share, just to be careful who they share with, to make sure they have good support. If you have a therapist, that's great. If you don't, find a friend or somebody that you really trust, because I think there's nothing more powerful than being listened to being heard, and to being believed. But you have to be careful who you share it with. You have to be wise with it. And if you can't find someone to share it with, then write your story down. Tell yourself your story, because it's the denying it, it's the blocking it out and putting it out there somewhere. It occupied so much space inside of me. And when I was able to release that by writing and speaking about it, there's like more of me can turn up, more of me can show up, and it doesn't impact on me in any way. I don't feel like there's any residue of trauma left in my systems at all. So find your voice. It's never ever too late to find your voice and get support.
Mm-hmm. Going back to something you were saying a little bit earlier, where you had this surprise of forgiveness come across you, and you're like, where the hell is this coming from? And I don't want this. You were saying, I don't want this forgiveness. I've been reading a couple of books recently on forgiveness, actually, and I've just started to come to a reframe myself, that seeing forgiveness as about you and not the other person. And you framed it really nicely when you said, if I hold on to this resentment and these ideas of revenge that you had, that does nothing to the other person. All that does is harm me. And so I've had a little bit of a kind of a reframe, and almost like a breakthrough, in terms of looking at forgiveness is for us and not necessarily for the other person.
I think if you look at the word, it's forgiving, and it was for giving me a better chance. It has nothing to do with them. I didn't need them to come up to me and tell me that they were sorry. It was an act of self-love, totally self-empowering, and it was my key to freedom, and it cut the chains that tied me to the past and limited my growth. It really was nothing to do with them. I guess you could also call it resilience or authenticity or courage, whatever you want to use, understanding. But just to be able to let everything go, to know that it's in the past. What I saw really was just you have to work the trauma out. I agree. You can't just come to that place overnight. But once the trauma's worked out, it really was about just letting it go. Don't let the pictures impact on me in any way anymore. They're just memories and pictures, and we can get seduced by them. We can watch them over and over again, or we can just say, okay, that's done. It's really time to let it go.
Mm-hmm. I noticed you use the words pictures when you're describing the experience. Is that a deliberate reframe that you've done to make it just, it's an objective picture, it has no emotional attachment for me?
Yeah, it did come back. For me, it came back really in my dream state. So every night I would go to sleep and I would get nightmares, or pictures, I would call them. And they're no longer, they don't hold anything. They are just pictures. They are from the past. It's not happening right here, right now. I know I'm safe in this moment. And when I saw that, I had so much fear for most of my life. Everything scared me. Fear was my best friend. And I set out to challenge fear. So I put myself into situations that would normally have scared me. And I really learned that fear is our imagination. Everything I was scared on was based on what had happened or based on what could happen to me. If I stayed with right here, right now, in this moment, I'm okay. So these pictures can't harm me anymore. They're done and finished. But it's like going to a cinema, the multi-complex, and watching the same film over and over again. It's almost like I had to desensitize myself to watch another bit of evidence come up and then thank that one for showing it to me and then just move on. And then another one would come up till eventually I could watch the whole show and it didn't have the same energy attached. The sting had gone from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're now in this position where you put the story down in writing, it ends up in a book, people start reading it, and suddenly you find yourself in this role of being a spokesperson for rape and sexual violence. Can you share with us some of what you've been learning on this particular journey? What do you find has been coming up as you share this story and share your lessons and experiences more and more with people?
Yeah, really, it's the sadness of the shame. So many people are so ashamed. I get messages every day from readers or people that have heard me speak or heard me on the radio or something, and they'll say to me things like, I can't like your post on your public Facebook page or Instagram because then people will know that I've been a victim as well. So they're still caught up in what other people will think about them. But then I've had amazing examples of why I should continue to speak out. So I've been interviewed by amazing people, yourself obviously included, but one of the best, I hate to say, was Sir Trevor MacDonald, which is very
I'm
hard
not
to
competing
compete
with him.
It was obviously lovely to meet him. But afterwards, my friend told me her mum had been listening, and basically, to cut a long story short, she told her daughter that she had been raped when she was a teenager, and she'd never told anyone. She was 81 when she told her, and
Wow.
she ended 64 years of silence. So that's my evidence for speaking out. When I did my TEDx in Glasgow in June, there were 2,000 people, and afterwards I was contacted by a head teacher who told me one of his young pupils that he took with him also disclosed to a teacher that she had been raped by her uncle just 3 years ago, and she said if she hadn't heard me, I've now been to the school and I've met her and I'm going to go and speak to the school as well. She said she would never have told anyone, and now she's going through the justice system, she's having counselling, the school is supporting her, amazing school. So I just think, well, if I'm just meant to speak to her and just meant to speak to that woman who heard me on the radio, then that's my job done. We never know the ripple effects of where it goes, but yeah, I really believe in the power of sharing our stories.
Mm-hmm. How do you preserve your energy in this process? Because when you share something that's very emotional and you're in that place of giving, it can be a very tiring, exhausting experience. And you've been going on an amazing journey. I've seen the photos in South Africa and going all over the world sharing this story and this message, and that must be something that takes a lot of energy. What do you do to look after yourself throughout this process?
Well, I'm fitness mad, so I go to the gym, I do karate, I do yoga, I walk my dog every day, I have peace and quiet, I cook, I read a lot, so I look after myself. But I'm in a great position because I worked as a therapist for years, that I wasn't in it for the money because it's the worst paid job. And really, I just said to myself, if I'm meant to be a speaker and give up being a therapist, then I'd like a sign. I'd love to work internationally. And I thought that would never happen. But as you mentioned, I woke up last January the 1st with an invitation to South Africa. And then my first paid overseas event was working for UNICEF in the Maldives. And I thought, okay, well, this is a good sign. So every event has always come to me. I've never gone looking for work. I don't work very hard, maybe a few speaking gigs a month, but that's fine. I just feel like life has put me right now where I'm meant to be, and I'm just going with the flow. Mm-hmm. So, I just take it as it comes.
Yeah. How do you think we can bring more love into the world? Because I think there's an element of your message that is ultimately about, let's get past the division and the conflict and the hate and the resentment. How can we bring more love into the world?
I think really with understanding, and then with understanding comes compassion, because it was my journey of really wanting to understand what these two young men had seen, heard or experienced that made me start to feel compassion in my heart. And if we start to teach that at a young age, that we can all be kind, nobody ever got poor by giving anything to anyone away. Kindness is in with all of us. Everything is about where you put your attention. It's where you put your focus. But with understanding, doesn't mean you have to agree with a person, but if you can understand their point of view, then that will bring in compassion as well.
Mm-hmm. Something I've been getting more and more interested in recently is the idea of micro decisions that we have throughout our lives, and every opportunity or every sort of day we get these opportunities to go one way or the other, one way or the other, one way or the other. And I'm really interested in how these micro decisions can shape so much of our future story from that point on. As you look back over your life, Madeleine, what are some of the choices that have made you who you are today?
Well, it's interesting you say micro decisions, because I used to put so much energy into thinking about the taxi driver who took me and my friend when we were very drunk from the cafe with the two young men back to my friend's mum's empty flat. And I thought, if he made the decision to kick the two boys out, he must have seen what was starting. My life would have been altered completely. Yeah. But I guess going away when I did, meeting Stephen at 17, 36 years ago now, and trusting him when I came back. He lived in Glasgow and I lived in London. Before the internet, before mobile phones, we had to phone each other after 6 on the house phone and travel up and down on the coach. There was no cheap EasyJet flights or anything, write letters. So yeah, trusting that he was meant to be the one. My instinct always told me he was he was safe to be with, which is a strange word to use when you talk about relationships, but I knew that I could trust him. Mm-hmm. And really with him, I learned what love was. He showed me unconditional love, and I learned that I was lovable, because then I was at a place where my opinion of myself was so low, my self-worth, my self-confidence, and I would drive him mad. How could he love someone like me? Surely he could see what I thought about myself, but he didn't. He saw something very different. So love was always going to win over hate, always.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you mentioned your husband, actually. I meant to come back to this earlier. As you said, you met when you were 17, and this is only 4 years after this experience. There must have been a lot of stuff still going on for you at that point in terms of relationships. How did you work through that? Were there any sort of processes or techniques that you used that you found really useful for processing some of that baggage that you're carrying?
I don't think I really did then. I think I was still in a numbed out stage, and just really, I became really promiscuous as a result of being raped, because I think now when I look back, if a guy tried it on, I just let him do whatever he wanted. I was just too scared to say no. Basically, I thought it would get violent like the last time. And I just put him down as someone else that I had met. But then we came back to this country. I was in London, he was in Glasgow, and he still wanted to see me. And I think then I just started to trust my gut. And because I saw him every 2 weeks, it was very different. Something just felt okay. So, the night that it all took place, I really know that I had an out-of-body experience. I left my body, and my journey has always been about getting back into my body, connecting and grounding myself, and restoring all of my memories. Mm. And I think that was the start. Falling in love and meeting Stephen was the start of really connecting back in, grounding myself, coming home, so to speak.
Yeah. Is there anything that you do now on a regular basis that helps you just stay grounded, stay present, stay focused?
Yeah, if I ever get triggered in any way, which I don't really very often, I'm very aware now. I have done so much personal development. I've done every course therapy going, that I can just see what's taking place, and I will just, take some time by myself, breathe, connect in, ground myself, rather than go out the way, just try and come back in. Mm-hmm. And just allow what's ever coming up, and I just thank whatever it was that got triggered, that it's just some residue left that I need to work, and then it's gone. So I don't get caught in any of the drama anymore. Yeah. I can't do that.
So what you've been sharing so far, we've said that it resonates a lot with women who've gone through a similar experience. And I'm sure there are people listening right now. You'll probably get a message at some point from someone who's been listening and has a Me Too experience that they want to share.
And sadly, it's not just women too. Yesterday, we just
Yeah,
heard about this Indonesian man who they think has raped about 190 people, the majority of them male. So I get messages from men as well. It doesn't, it resonates with both men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. It's worth sharing that. Speaking of men, what do you feel that men need to be more aware of in regards to issues of rape and sexual violence?
I think it's on all of us to end rape culture. And rape culture doesn't mean that you're going out there raping, but if you are a teenage boy at school and you're sharing porn on your phone, or if you're in the gym and you're hearing a guy slag off another woman and making sexist jokes and you ignore it, then you're just as bad. It's on all of us to step up and call out when we think, or if we see a woman getting harassed and we don't step in, it's on all of us to do something about it. We have to change our culture, our attitudes, our judgments. We can't be naive to think that when a court is on trial, there's a rape trial going on, we can't be naive to think that that jury hasn't made up their mind before they sit down. They're already, before they hear the evidence even, they're already saying, oh, well, she was drinking, she was wearing this, he did that. What do they expect? We have to shift that mindset. 100% of all rapes are from rapists. One woman was saying to me on Twitter today, well, if women wear slutty clothes, blah, 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 then they're asking for... Babies are raped. Women in burqas are raped. Men wearing jeans are raped. It doesn't matter. Clothes don't cause rape. So it's on all of us to speak out and to challenge any kind of victim blaming messages that we see everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you raise about judgment. It actually made me think about 6 months ago, I was called up for jury duty. I didn't ultimately serve, but I went in and I saw the accused and I sat down and I said, they're guilty. I wasn't even in the jury. I hadn't heard anything about them. I just heard the very brief bio that we got to give us an idea of the case. And I looked at the person and I went, yeah, you did it. Instant judgment. And how could I possibly say I'm going to give this a fair and balanced and weighted verdict at the end, because I'd made my judgment as soon as I'd saw them.
The justice system really is quite an unjust system. It's really, I know so many people that are let down by the justice system. And, women, men will have their phones taken away from them if they're being a victim of rape and they don't get their phone back for a year or two. Their clothes are taken away from them. Their sexual history is addressed in court. Nothing to do with that. Doesn't matter. Even if it started off consensual and you changed your mind, you're still allowed to change your mind. But it's pretty traumatic to go through the court process if you've been a victim. You won't get a lawyer. You're just a witness in a trial, which people don't really understand. You're not really supported, and you will be given a hard time. And when I worked as a volunteer at Rape Crisis, we wouldn't discourage women from going to court, charging someone, but we would be very clear, the chances are it's not likely to end in a prosecution, and you would put yourself through all of that, which is an awful thing to say.
Yeah.
And as we've seen just now in Cyprus, this young woman who I do believe has been raped by, I don't know if all 12 young men, but I believe at least some of them. The forensic scientist said there was 4 cases of different DNA found on her body. She went to speak up about rape and she was accused of lying in court. So if you're a woman in Cyprus, that's going to really put you off from reporting a rape. If that's their attitudes, the judge wouldn't even entertain the idea she'd been raped. He only would speak about her being accused of lying. So all these things silence people even more to speak out.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to shift onto a more positive notes, because I think you do such a good job of bringing a positive message out of a negative experience. And I'd like to start wrapping up with thinking about some future ideas and kind of big picture thinking. And the first of these questions in this regard is, what are you grateful for?
You know what? I was so close to being killed that night that actually it was very odd, because I had to really be grateful to one of the rapists, the one that I call the one that wasn't as bad as the worst one. he stopped his friend from killing me. And for years, I thought, how can I be grateful to him? Because he did all these revolting things to my body. But I'm so grateful that he stopped his friend from killing me, because I'm here now. I've met my husband. I have 3 gorgeous girls, and I really love life. You know, life is for living. I'm so grateful for my life, and I will enjoy my life as much as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Funny you just mentioned your children there, because my next question is about children. And I'd like you to imagine that you have a very young child in front of you, 4 or 5 years old, and you've got to give them you've got to tell them something that you think is going to help them for the rest of their life, going into the rest of the 21st century, this new decade that we're in, of course, the 2020s. What would you be saying to that child to help them throughout the course of their life?
I would want to teach any young child about consent. And that doesn't just mean, you know, in terms of a sexual relationship, but about trusting your gut, saying no when you want to say no, saying yes when you want to say yes, not ever being forced to go along in a situation because your social mind comes in and you do it out of politeness. You know, when we're little, we're forced to sit on Santa's knee or go and give Granny a hug, or the auntie with all the chin hairs, whatever. We might not necessarily want to do it, but we're forced to go and give someone a kiss or a hug. No, you should be your choice. And I think it's really important to teach kids about healthy relationships, what respect looks like, to be able to earn respect and to give respect back. And I think if we could do that to our younger generation, society would be so different.
Mm-hmm. There's a little bonus question that's just come up just from your answer there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice for saying no? And I mean that in all respects of the word, when there's something that we're being pressured into do, but we don't really want to do it. We don't want to let people down, hurt people's feelings. Do you have any advice on how we can give a powerful no rather than the weak yes or okay that so often comes out?
we don't have to back it up and make excuses. I can't do that because, and I'm really sorry to let you down, but you just have to really tune in and listen to what your body is saying. You know, they don't call it a gut instinct for nothing. Most of our thinking and feeling comes from our solar plexus, our hara, our stomach. And often we know we shouldn't have done the things that we've done. You know, we had a sense that there was a voice inside telling me that I shouldn't walk down this path or I shouldn't go there with them. So really listen to your intuition, listen to your gut. What is it saying to you? And just forget about the social mind, forget about being polite, especially if it's about your safety. Just say no. And we have to get used to saying no without backing it up. It's okay. What's the worst that can happen? You might offend someone. But if your gut was right and then up to no good, that's actually good. Get out of the situation.
Yeah. We were talking there about going into this new decade, the 2020s, and my theme for this year, in a rather cliched way, is vision. I thought I was being really clever when I came out with this. I was like, 2020, 2020 vision.
Where did you get that from?
Turns out everyone has had that idea and everyone's been banging on about it. But nonetheless, that's the theme that I've settled for this year. It's about helping people to create the vision that they want for themselves, and of course, to create the vision that I want for my life as well. If you look ahead to the next year, 2020, what's your theme for the year? What do you want 2020 to be about for you?
I don't really have a plan. I'm really rubbish businesswoman. I'm just happy just to, wherever I'm at is where I'm at, and I trust life that this is where I'm meant to be right now. And so far it's been working. So far people are asking me to speak, and I'm going to speak. And if I go to speak somewhere, then someone in the audience will ask me to go somewhere else. So I've been really supported on this journey from, I don't know where, but somebody always has my back. And yeah, I'm just excited to see where it all goes.
Mm-hmm. So if we fast forward from this year and we go right to the very end, the last day that you have on Earth, and you look back at the time that you've spent here with us. When you look back on your life, what legacy do you want to have left during the time that you were gifted on Earth?
I really want to show people that it's not about what happens to us, it's what we do with it. That's what matters. And just to find your voice and to live your life as best as you possibly can, and to end the shame and the stigma and the silence surrounding sexual violence. I'll be happy with that. And I will speak out now It took me years to find my voice, but I will speak out now to my dying breath.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything during this conversation that you feel you wanted to share, but you haven't yet shared it?
I don't think so. I just really want to tell anyone who's listening that it's never too late to get support. If any of this has triggered you or has made you, something's bubbling up that's been buried, go and get support. Don't suffer in silence, because the silence really only hurts us and protects the perpetrators. And the more people that speak out, I'm not suggesting that people stand on the stage and speak out like I do, but the more people that speak out, the better society will be as well. We can end the shame together. We can break the silence so there is no more stigma.
Mm-hmm. So for people who've been listening, Madeline, and they've connected with your story, they perhaps want to send you a message like so many people have done in the past, where would you recommend that people can get in touch with you to find out about who you are, the work that you do, the books that you've written, the places that you speak? Where's the best place for people to go to find out more?
Yeah, I am all over the place. If you like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you can take your pick, or my website, madelineblack.co.uk, or my memoir is Unbroken, which you can get on Amazon.
Well, Madeline, I just want to say thank you for speaking with us today. I feel you've shown such courage, but courage in a way that, I don't know, like it seems like you're having fun at the same time. And that might sound like a weird thing to say, but it genuinely seems that you are enjoying life and you're enjoying everything that you've got to live for. And that's a different form of courage as opposed to just facing adversities, that there's a courage to actually kind of live your life fully that I've
and I want people to see that there is hope. You can people assume that if that happens, your life would be done and you'd never get over it. Like you read comments on social media, oh, that poor girl, her life is over. No, your life is not over. You can always heal. I had amazing teachers. I'm sorry, we're getting back into it now. My mum had her neck broken in an operation and healed herself. My dad was a Holocaust survivor, and he lost his parents, his brothers and sisters. His youngest brother was only 6. They were all murdered in Auschwitz, and he just said life is for living. He met my mum, had 5 of us, and not really by what he said, by what he did. I saw, we can get past anything that happens to us in life. So there's always hope. And somebody once told me what hope stands for, and it's just perfect. Hold on, pain ends.
Oh, brilliant. Let's end there. That's amazing.
Good hopeful place.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Madeline.
You're welcome.
If you've enjoyed today's episode and you'd like to take your education with Author Your Life a little bit further, then I'd love for you to join us in the brand new Author Your Life Academy. The Author Your Life Academy is an online educational community where you can start a new and exciting chapter of your life. In the Academy, there is ongoing, extended, exclusive training to help you build the skills that you need to grow and develop in your life. You get to join a community of aspirational story changers who are supporting you, encouraging you, and celebrating with you along your journey. I'm also in there as well, providing tailored specific mentorship through live question and answer sessions and priority access through messaging and emails. If you'd like to enroll in the Academy, you can do so for just $27 a month. That's £20 for those of you in the UK. When you join, you get 3 awesome bonuses. You get an audiobook, you get an online course, and you get a ticket to one of my live events. So if you're ready to start something new and exciting in your life, come join us in the Author Your Life Academy. You can find out more about how you enroll by going to www.authoryourlife.org/academy. I'd love to see you in there. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it hugely if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. With your review, please be as honest and detailed as you can be. Because with honest and detailed feedback, that helps me to adapt and grow this podcast to most serve you, the listener. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you aren't going to miss any of the future episodes that we've got lined up for you. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story.